Welcome back to the Zero eMichigan podcast. Today we have with us Cristina Muñoz, who we met at the Grand Rapids Drive Electric Earth Day event. So Cristina, if you would introduce yourself, we'll get the conversation started.
Yeah, hi, my name is Cristina Muñoz. I am here in Grand Rapids, Michigan. I work for Coral Health West. My job title is an epidemiologist, but I kind of wear many hats within the Department of Research. So I'm just happy to be on this call. Let me know what you'd like to learn about.
Yeah, I think one of the topics that Larry and I have wanted to explore for a while now is the female perspective for EV driving. We've had a couple guests on where they say, this is really my wife's car, or, we do have some ladies in our EV community. And one of the things I wanted to explore is what are the things that are important to you? So, if we go back in history a little bit, Henry Ford's wife, Clara, drove a 1914 Detroit Electric. If you go up to Ludington, there's the Cartier mansion. Warren Cartier was a lumber baron, and his wife Kate drove a 1917 Detroit Electric. And if you're interested, that's actually on display.
Wow.
And the Cartier mansion is actually pretty cool too. They have a carriage room where you can sleep, and they have a map of charging stations in Chicago in like 1920s, something like that. It's like, whoa, wait a minute. They had charging stations. How does it even work? So back in the day, and I'm reading a quote here, women were presumed to be too weak, timid, and fastidious to drive a noisy, smelly gasoline-powered car, wrote historian Virginia Scharf. Thus, first, manufacturers influenced by Victorian notions of masculinity and femininity devised a kind of separate sphere ideology for automobiles. Gas cars were for men, electric cars for women. So we're here to bust some of these modern myths. But according to a CleanTechnica article, I'm looking off to the side here to make sure I get this right. In the US, women typically make up less than a third of new EV buyers. So automakers are having a tough time getting women to embrace EVs. So what, I guess, from your perspective, first of all, you're an EV driver, right? So, and tell us a little bit about what you drive, how you got there, what was your journey to driving an EV?
Yeah, so I drive a Tesla Model Y long range. It's white. I just purchased it in December, took delivery in December of 2022. But I actually ordered it in July of 2022. So it took several months. So in terms of the journey, it's something I think I've always wanted, but I've always been somebody who's interested in STEM fields. And so to me, it just made a lot of sense. But I think the biggest challenge is getting your salary high enough to be able to afford one, and kind of like selecting the right time point as to when to actually purchase one. And I thought this was a good time. Just from where I was at and just how much driving I do, it just made the most sense and kind of where the world was going. So that's kind of the nutshell, but if you want to delve more into the details,
Sure.
we can do that as well.
So for you, was it kind of a financial decision? I know the upfront cost for EVs, at least today, is still a little bit higher than a equivalent combustion car. But was the operating cost part of the thought process, or was there an environmental component?
You know what? It was operating costs. I was in grad school. Yes, and I would say it's all of those factors. Just took that into consideration. With the environment going the way it is, with the pandemic the way it went, I mean, it doesn't make sense to really waste a lot of time right now trying to make things worse for the environment and our financial, situation. Everything's more expensive, and so you really got to be more selective about where do you put your money, where do you put your time. And for me, because I drive so much, I travel a lot. I have a lot of different activities. I know a lot of different people all across the state and the country and even the world. For me, it just made the most sense to just go electric, because I think that's where everything's headed. I wasn't aware that there'd be all these price reductions and kind of all this, like, all these things happening in early 2023, but it was interesting to see that I had pulled the trigger right before that. So my perspective is probably I'm probably really future oriented in the way I think. Which is not everybody, that I can't represent a woman in that.
Sure.
I'm definitely not super traditional in the way I live my life. So I think there's that component too.
What car did you come from? What were you driving before? Like,
what car did I come from? Yeah, I had a Honda HRV 2018.
And that's
So
what,
it's a smaller version of the CRV.
and were you like getting leases, upgrading it yearly, or no, you had that for 10 years?
I paid it off actually. So it was I paid it off in early 2022, and I just sold it and kind of applied that whatever I made from that to the Model Y, pay it off.
You know, that seems to be like breaking away from like Honda. That seemed to be, I've noticed that because I've been part of EV groups for 10 years and we talked about it a little bit there. And, you know, breaking away because Honda doesn't really have anything and you want to stay the HRV. So you stayed in that mini sport ute style vehicle.
Oh, so
Right.
that's a hybrid, isn't it?
It is hybrid.
Yeah.
No,
So,
it's not a hybrid.
oh, it's
It's
not.
a crossover.
Okay. No, I meant the drivetrain. Is it just a combustion engine, the HRV, or is it a hybrid? I don't.
It's
So,
CVT. Yeah.
okay.
Oh, it's gas. There's no
Right.
electric.
It's gas, but I mean, like a Prius is a hybrid in the
Mhm.
sense that the drive wheels are actually electric, but there's a combustion engine to create the electricity. In other words, it's already very efficient. So you were basically went from an already very efficient vehicle and kind of took that next leap into the pure electric. Does that sound about right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
that sounds right. Yeah. Just trying to optimize.
Yeah.
So my dog says hello, by the way. She just jumped into the camera.
That's awesome. Yeah,
She
my
loves
cat.
she loves a Tesla.
Oh, that's fun. So actually, since we one of our prior guests, he mentioned the dog mode. Do you use the dog mode to leave
Mhm.
the dog in the car and make sure that the climate is,
Yes.
safe for the dog? That's cool.
Yeah, I don't have to worry that she's gonna fry from the heat or get too cold if it's winter. So it makes me feel better if somebody walks by and sees a dog and there's a dog mode that they're in a comfortable temperature. So it's actually that's one great feature that I
Mhm.
love from the Tesla.
That's part of the
Um,
that's part of the high techs.
I just heard too now that you can use the camera in the car and you could check on your dog. Have you used that feature yet, or do you have that?
I haven't used it yet. No, she's usually okay as long as she's a comfortable temperature. She's usually fine. She loves car rides actually, more than just staying at home.
That's
I
cool.
have a
Yeah,
house on the east side of the state, so I travel back and forth. I actually have two homes, so
Okay. I don't know about
it's
you.
nice to have.
I was getting a little bit of delay from Christina. Could you
yeah. I
could you
saw
say
that
that
too.
second part again? You said you have a home in the east part of the state and you go back and forth. Could you say
Oh,
that again, please?
okay. I just wasn't sure if that. I think it looks like the connection is a little off. So yeah, I apologize, I didn't hear that. So I actually have a home on the other side of the state in Detroit. I have a house there, and so I have an apartment in Grand Rapids and a house in Detroit. So I drive back and forth between my homes pretty often. So um, that also contributed to the fact that I wanted to get electric because I could just stop on the way in Lansing and charge my car and get lunch. I think it made sense with my lifestyle.
Mm-hmm. Which brings up a good point. So you have a house on the east side of the state. Do you have a private garage with that where you can charge the car?
Yes, I do. Yep.
Okay.
I have
And then
an 819 square foot garage.
okay.
It's
Because
yeah, it's a level 2 trailer.
okay. Yeah, because being able to charge in your own garage is one of the kind of key features. Now, your place in Grand Rapids, is that a freestanding house, or do you have a place to charge overnight, or do you have to rely on public charging?
I have to rely on public charging in Grand Rapids, and so I live downtown. There is charge point stations within our apartment building, and there's a wait list right now, so I'm currently not on it, but I can get a parking spot with a charge point charging station if once that wait list is lifted. So um,
Okay. Well, I have to say that's pretty bold already. I mean, because that's
Hmm.
tough when you don't have charging where you can reliably charge every night. So you're then when you're in Grand Rapids, you're searching for charging in the area of your apartment or your condo, or do you go to the Tesla superchargers, or do you have another solution for that?
I go to the Tesla supercharger typically when I go to Meyer, um, probably
Okay.
like twice a week or so.
Okay. And that's where we saw you first, right? At the Meyer
Yeah, that was
Cascade.
where I was.
That's great.
The usual Saturday visit.
Yeah. Yeah, the multi-dwelling unit, I know that's one of the things that if I put on my consumer's energy hat, that's where we struggle a little bit to try to get
Okay.
to try to get charging to people that live in a place where they don't have a garage or a driveway where they can park every night,
Right.
because every apartment is a little different. So for example, my in-laws have a place in Phoenix, Arizona, and they it's a condo, and then they have basement parking, and there's no place to charge there. There's some outlets there, some 110-volt outlets, but they're really not supposed to plug in there. So then it becomes a discussion about where does the electricity come from and how can you get charging to people so that they pay for their fair share. And there are solutions for that. So it sounds like the place that you live in, Grand Rapids, they're starting to look into that a little bit for their tenants or for the owners.
I think so. I mean, it looks like there's at least 10 Tesla owners in this building. So I see like the whole row of Teslas lined up with their charging stations.
Okay.
Charging, they can expand that further for more electric cars.
And then charging on the road. So you mentioned stopping in Lansing, and so I myself have been a Tesla owner since 2015, and the Lansing stop near the big shopping plaza with the movie theater and the Fairfield Inn. I know that's where I used to stop, and it was one of my favorite places to stop because there was an independent coffee shop there called Chapelure, and they had nice coffee and pastries and that sort of thing. Unfortunately, Chapelure closed, and so it became less attractive to me. And also during COVID, the hotel, and maybe it was just the particular staff that was there, they wouldn't let people from the supercharger in to use the restrooms, which was kind of annoying, because then you had to go find a different place. And like I said, maybe I just got the wrong person at the wrong time, but I know in Lansing now there's a second supercharger stop available near a Meyer, and I personally find that pretty pleasant because with a Meyer you can get whatever you want while you're stopping. You have a favorite place to stop in the Lansing area? Is it one of those?
I would say it's that plaza specifically because you can get lunch, and there's a movie theater, there's coffee shops, there's restaurants. I'm actually pretty flexible. It doesn't really bother me a whole lot as to where the charging station is, but maybe that's just my individual.
So you figured it out. I mean, you have PlugShare, or do you primarily use the navigation, whatever it recommends, what the Tesla screen recommends? Is that your approach? Okay. Yeah.
That's my approach.
And what was that also a decision factor in terms of getting a Tesla? Because Tesla makes it easy because they own the whole architecture. Like they have the car, the superchargers are built into the navigation system. Whereas if you get a different vehicle that's not a Tesla, right now, it's a little bit hit or miss because they're dependent on public charging, or you need to use a tool like PlugShare or a better route planner. I mean, when you were looking at cars, was that a factor in terms of getting a Tesla?
Yeah, I would say that was one of the factors, but I would say this is probably particularly me as an individual. I'm pretty hard-headed and stubborn. If I want something, I'm going to go and get it.
Yeah.
I just wanted a Tesla for many reasons, other than outside of that charging station system. But I also think that they've been working on electric cars for far longer than all these other ones that are coming up, that are newer. I think they've just been at it for so long, at least a decade, right? So I think they're leading in it. So for me, it made the most sense. It's just I've always wanted one since at least 2020.
Right.
So when other car companies are catching up now.
yeah, they are. But when people ask me like what kind of EV should I get, and I always ask, are you doing a lot of road tripping? Because if you are, it's really, really hard to beat the Tesla supercharger system.
Right.
I mean, I have a Tesla and I have a non-Tesla, and I love both cars. The other one's a Kia Niro. I've taken on a road trip, but it's a little more challenging to do the charging on a road trip in a non-Tesla. So I think that's often a factor. I was just curious if that was a part of the whole equation for you.
It's also partially my career. So I work with a lot of hospital C-suite members and leadership. And now that we've merged with Beaumont on the east side of the state, there's a lot of the leaders often go back and forth between both sides of the state, and you'll see a lot of them actually do drive Teslas. It's it's part of fitting to that culture of the hospital leadership is that you got to kind of join the club eventually of driving a Tesla. Our president drives a Model S. I'm not saying you have to, but I'm saying it's just kind of an it's a nuanced, like,
Right.
cultural.
Yeah, I used to work for a German multinational, and one of our bosses from Germany would tease me. I was driving a Subaru at the time, and he's like, "You are German. You need to drive a German car. You work for a German company." So before you knew it, I had an Audi. So it's that kind of a little bit of peer pressure. So I can appreciate that. Go
So
ahead, Larry.
that probably was a big part too, right? You're seeing your coworkers driving the Tesla. That made it more comfortable. They were sharing how easy it was to charge. That was a part for you, right?
Yeah, it was a big part of me when I was in grad school from 2017 to 2019. Actually, one of my classmates who I worked on my capstone with actually drives a Roadster from Kentucky to Michigan for the on-campus sessions. So she's a surgeon over in Louisville, and she was telling us about it. And so it was just, I think she brought it in like 15 bottles of whiskey convertible. I was just like, this is such surreal. But I just think it was just part of the trend with like with the world's going, and then kind of like the people that are running the hospitals. Sustainability is definitely something on our list that we want to focus on after we have this merger completed. And I think that that's going to be kind of the next big thing that hospitals will be focusing on.
Mm-hmm. And
that's a great story.
Yeah.
With the Roadster. And now what? I didn't catch
the blue Roadster. Yeah, Dr. Susan Bornstein. She's got her own website if you want to check that out.
You'll have to send us a link. Send us a link.
Yeah.
We'll put that in the show notes.
Susan, if you're watching this, I just give you a shout out. So
that's cool.
Right.
Profit over there.
Like Carl was pointing out, I think a lot of gals, right, don't have that in their circles, so they don't realize how it's possible and all the win-win. And so like that's just really encouraging to hear. And I wonder if you did not have the co-workers with Teslas and didn't have that experience, do you think you could have come across to the conclusion you're at, or was that the main part that got you there?
I can't even say what the main fact. I think it was timing. I think that was one of the main factors, but I don't think it's the only one. I definitely think that, we're kind of the environment is really changing, and it's going to continue to change. And so I think there's that one component to that too, is like our carbon emissions are just increasing, and we're finally seeing proof of that and kind of the crazy weather we're seeing. I think people are now more aware of that, and I think that's going to impact hospitals a lot more in the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years. It's going to be a priority because it's going to actually impact how we impact patients, affect delivery of healthcare services, because we're going to be battling other disasters outside of a hospital that is not directly related, but does impact the social determinants of health, which is what actually determines the majority of your health status, not your access to care. So I know I give you a mouthful there, but
yeah,
it's just something I've been thinking about.
That's a great point. I know, like in where Larry lives in Kalamazoo, the downtown hospital has level 2 chargers. Do you find that hospitals are becoming more proactive in providing chargers for patients and for the staff, for doctors?
I would say so, and I think they're going to continue to do so. If any conversations are brought up, I definitely encourage it. I've encouraged one of our scientists to actually go towards the Tesla route. His wife's a pharmacist, and his concern was actually the range of charging, and kind of how do you pay for that? It was more the technicalities and the specifics of how it works, but I think he was more open to it now that we have the price reductions happening.
I also recently had a conversation with a pharmaceutical sales rep who contacted me. She said, "Hey, the company cars that we're being offered right now are all electric. Like our company wants to go all in on electric, and we're being forced," is how she put it. And she said, here are the 4 choices that they gave us. So tell me a little bit about what would be,
right,
about the details. And she was a little bit worried about it, but what I found interesting is that the company wasn't giving them a choice. They said, you basically have these 4 vehicles, they're all electric. So pick one of those. And if you don't want one, then you got to drive your own car. And she did say, for special circumstances, like if there was a snowstorm or something like that, it was a Michigan, she's based in Michigan. They would be willing to, let them rent an all-wheel drive or, a Jeep or something like that to do what they need to do. So I thought that was very interesting that the company is essentially saying it's this way or highway kind of thing. So I see a I
Can
see
you
a theme
share what
here.
the four cars were?
Yeah, we can talk about that. I'm not going to talk about the company, but it was a Bolt EUV. It
Mhm.
was a Ford Mustang Mach-E. It was the Hyundai Ioniq 5, and it was a Tesla Model 3.
All
Um,
right.
and so I thought that was an interesting choice. And I told her, unfortunately, the only car on that list that I would not pick for what she does, because she does a lot of traveling as well, was the Bolt EV. And the Bolt
Mhm.
EV is it's not a very good road trip car because it charges so slowly. And I actually recommended the first choice would be the Tesla, and
Yeah.
she test drove one, and she said, because it was the Model 3, she said, I feel down low and I really like an SUV. So I think the discussion we were heading towards was actually the Ioniq 5 because it has the faster charging. And for her, that question was more about, again, getting stranded, the range anxiety, that sort of thing. But I found it fascinating that the company didn't really give them a choice. They like, this is it.
That's
You're going
encouraging, though.
electric.
Good for them, I think.
Yeah.
Good for them.
I
So
think eventually a lot of companies will do that. I have another friend who's come same thing for a Bolt as well. Not health, but he has to drive a Bolt because of work.
so thinking about public charging, and I know you're kind of not necessarily tied into the supercharger network, but it's certainly easier for you. So with my Tesla, I have an adapter so I can use the CCS. But just thinking about public charging in general, are there things that you would like to see at public chargers in terms of safety or ease of use or the amenities that maybe aren't the way that they should be?
I also just need more of them.
More of them?
I can't really think of anything in terms of safety. I think volume, just higher demand, supply of stations and charging options. Like it's not a gas station in the middle of nowhere. So
Right.
I've heard stories from women who are like, have had kind of scary situations. They go to a gas station and some guy's following them and they're alone. And it's just, it's nice to have a Tesla with 8 cameras too, that if anything was going to happen, I mean, it's on camera.
That's a great point. More stations, but you did mention like the creepiness aspect of some places. I mean, so for example, between where I live in West Michigan and if you go to Chicago in a non-Tesla, there's a place, there's like a concrete plant where there's one DC fast charger, and I always think, I think if I was, in a more vulnerable part of the society, I would think that's not a place I would want to stop. Like there's not a place I would probably be able to use the restroom, or I'd like stay in my car and keep the doors locked, something like that. So, but I think to your point, if we get more chargers, if there was, let's say, and maybe it's not the prime location, but there was a truck stop that's open 24 hours where there's lots of lighting and,
Right.
then I'd say
there's the Starbucks and the Target.
yes,
There's stores and
exactly.
people.
Yeah, I'm all about the coffee myself, so I get that. But yeah, but someplace that you can go.
Right.
From a consumer's standpoint, I know early on there were people in our leadership that said, "Oh, we should just put charging stations at all of our service centers." And I was like, "Wait. Do you guys actually drive an EV? Do you understand how this works? Like, I'm not coming to a service center in an industrial park and sitting there on a Sunday night at 11 p.m. because there's nothing there, and then I'm just looking around to see if maybe a bear is going to come up. Plus, there's not even a restroom that you can use. So that just totally doesn't make any sense. There need to be amenities, needs to be well lit, all that sort of thing. And I just think, thinking of my wife, where would she be comfortable stopping? So yeah, no, that's a good point. If you build more of them and you have more choices, then people will naturally gravitate towards the ones that they feel more comfortable at. So I think that's a great way to look at it.
So do you go to other chargers besides Tesla, or are you just able to go just strictly to Tesla? You're not using any of the other public chargers?
I haven't used any of the other public chargers yet, but once I get a spot in this building, I'll use a charge point. But so far I've just been using Tesla because it's usually there's one pretty close by to wherever I'm at.
Cool. And then along this thing about being vulnerable, so now the father and son team, they challenged their viewers and they've come out with a little adapter that you plug in and Carl mentioned a bear, so they have a little they have a little skit where they show you, with a bear coming up on the car, and you want to be able to drive off. You can't get out of your car to go and plug it. The car won't move. So this adapter breaks away and it allows the car to drive. Or in the other instance, they also had a guy, creeping around with a hockey stick. And so this has been addressed. And so this thing's going to be coming on the market. But if you go to Now you can buy this little breakaway adapter that goes onto the Tesla and goes into your car and allows you to drive away, and this will just break away. So anyways, interesting.
Yeah, I think we need to put
That's cool.
we need to put a link to that, because I'd be curious about how that works, because typically most EVs, if they're plugged in, you can't move them, right?
Yeah. Listen to them talk
Right.
about it. I think they're investing. Somehow that little device is able to trick the car into thinking I don't understand, because I've made my own charger for my Volt, and when it shakes hands, and I tried to change that around for like one reason. There's some places where people are like, why is he getting to charge his car when I got to go pay for gas? It's not fair. And the Volt doesn't use that much electricity. So I was trying to figure out, how do I like have a plug that looks like a diesel truck, right? It's not charging my car. I'm just plugged in to warm the motor. And if I do that, nobody cares. So that's what I was trying to do. Anyways, I couldn't figure it out, but somehow they figured out how to trick the car into thinking it's not, and then it still charges, which blows my mind, but good on them. And it's a cool device, and it protects the charge cable. So when you drive off, that falls onto the ground, but that's the design. It like wraps around the whole end, so it can't hurt the Tesla charger. And then your car also, it's protected the way it breaks away. It's really cool.
Interesting.
But I will send you the link.
Yeah. We'll look for that. But getting back to Tesla and non-Tesla, I know for my wife, it was always when she wants to go on a road trip that is beyond the range of a single charge for our vehicles. And again, we have a Tesla, and we have now it's a Kia Niro. We used to have a Leaf, but she would always insist on taking the Tesla because it was so easy, the charge, right? You just drive up to a supercharger, you plug in, there's no swiping of cars, there's no app to activate, anything like that. So, I didn't, and I think maybe that's where she gets hung up. I have to, which app do I need to use? Is it the Charge Point? Is it the Electrify America? Or is it the Shell Recharge? I don't really understand. And so that's when she would say, okay, she's not a technical person. And maybe that's also a difference that, for her, it's like, how come I can't just go to like a gas station where it's the same nozzle, except maybe diesel, it's the same nozzle, and I just swipe a credit card and then I get what I want. Whereas, okay, if I go to this station, I need a charge point. If I go to this station, I need Electrify America, that sort of thing. So I think that's where Tesla still wins out. So if we get to the point where we have this plug-in charge system, which I know a lot of vehicles now are starting to adopt, I think even Fords and Kias, and well, actually everybody across the board are going in that direction, where you can go to a public charger like an Electrify America. You just plug in and it'll read the car's VIN, and as long as you have an account established with them, it'll just start charging. But I think that's where Tesla still has a huge advantage. So I don't know if that was a consideration for you again, but it's not, I'm not asking for the one prime reason, but it sounds like that whole package for Tesla just worked for you.
Yeah, I actually worked for the Office of Information Officer, my previous role, working with an IT. So you have to be pretty technical to work there and to have that mindset of kind of looking for a teacher. I was working on a big archiving project that was archiving all of the electronic medical records across all 90-something hospitals across the country in the middle of the pandemic. So for me, it was also like just an economic situation. Like it was just supply demand, like it's prices are going to go up and it's going to be kind of more valuable in some way. From a technology standpoint, from an environment standpoint, socially, it's going to be a struggle, I think, because I think women are kind of, they want to kind of know how to do everything. I'm definitely someone just go in there, I'll figure out all of like the last minute things I have to figure out. I'm not afraid to like just kind of test things out and explore and make mistakes. But I know a lot of my work kind of scared to get a electric, if I fixed it, what do I do? What do I have nobody to help me? That's a little bit of an exception in some ways, so not the majority. But
Well, it's good. I mean, everybody's different. I know obviously you don't speak for all women. We don't presume to speak for all men, but it's very interesting to get your perspective on it. We are getting a little bit of lag here, but I think we caught the point of what you were saying. Um, Maybe one other question. Do you have any suggestions for the EV community or the auto manufacturers or the charging networks to is there a way that they can be more inclusive of women and, maybe minorities in general? Anything that you can think of that can be done better?
I would say there needs to be more research on transportation, gas versus electric, and kind of more common knowledge. And I would say this education is that I think everybody should watch, even students in school, everywhere. It should be a standard in some schools as part of like your, I don't know, orientation or kind of where the world is going, how to do everything. And because I think it is definitely like, I think that just have this hybrid career world too, like have working hybrid in some roles or remote permanently. I think that's going to stay. And I think it's only going to continue in that direction. So it's changed the way we work and we travel and how we spend our time and our resources. So I would say more education, more conversations, and kind of more awareness to everyone. And I think it should be standard in schools.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, one of the things I give an EV 101 presentation to, different groups. And one of the things I often talk about is, gas versus electric in terms of efficiency. And, it's a gallon of gas has the equivalent of 33 kilowatt hours of energy, but most of that is wasted in a gas car. So it's just very, very transportable. So once you start thinking about that, when you have these arguments about, fossil fuels or, versus driving electric, it's like, oh, well, you're just generating the electricity from fossil fuels still. So, well, wait a minute, but the EV is actually quite a bit more efficient right off the bat, So yeah, I think once people learn those kind of things, suddenly you become more aware. It's just like once you drive an EV, you become more aware of the energy that you're using and where it's coming from. We've had a lot of guests on where they started driving an EV, and before you know it, they put solar on the roof because they didn't want to have to deal with, getting energy from the grid that may or may not be clean. It's getting greener all the time, but they just said, okay, I want to do it now. I want to drive on solar.
Yeah, it's like the gateway. And I probably will put solar on my house as well and probably follow that path as well once I get there. So that was my plan. Only driving electric cars.
That's cool. What surprised you most about, getting in their electric car? What's your favorite thing?
What surprises me the most and what's my favorite thing?
Yeah.
I don't know if I have a favorite thing. I like everything about my car, but I'm also like, I like that simplistic like interior too, that like around cars is just too much going on a dashboard. I just like having that like one screen and kind of feeling like you're in a cockpit of an airplane, but I also love airplanes. So there's just this sense of like, all right, I'm under control. I know where everything is. Like, I think for me, it was conceptual. Like that's also how I think. I think it was just made it easy. I think everything's like the burden of driving, like they made it as easy as it can be, given in modern society's challenges. That's to me is probably the best thing about it. And it surprised me probably was how quiet it was. I didn't really think of that. I mean, I know it's quiet, but I didn't realize it was.
Yeah, that's also my favorite. It's the quietness. It's almost addicting, right? You get in a car and the motor's rumbling, and you're just like, oh man, put me back in my electric car. It's just so peaceful.
Which also freaks people out when they first get into an electric car. It's like, is this thing's running? Like, I gave somebody a ride today, and I was trying to show them the charger, and they kept hitting the power button on and off. And it's like, no, you're turning it on and off because you don't hear anything. It's like, stop pushing the button, just turn it on once. Says, oh, well, I didn't hear anything. Well, that's because there's nothing to hear.
It's surprising how hard it is to get used to it. I made that mistake on my first couple. I constantly, you know what I mean? I had to retrain my brain, but I would, is it running? And well, we really appreciate you taking the time to share your experiences with us.
And I hope you'll stay involved in the community if that's your thing, and if it's not, that's cool too. There's some groups out there, and and hopefully they're inclusive enough and not, not toxic. But love to see you again at an event, and yeah, really appreciate your time and giving your input.
Thanks for having me, Carl.
If you enjoyed or learned from this episode of Zero E Michigan, please subscribe to us on your favorite podcast platform. Visit our YouTube channel for other related videos at youtube.com/@0E-Michigan.